Morning, everyone. Good afternoon. This is Nithin Ramachandra from the NR Hour Sports Show. This is episode 916. We're joined by a really special guest. His name is Terrell Fletcher. He's a former Wisconsin and NFL running back. He played for the San Diego Chargers throughout his career. Obviously, Wisconsin College, grew up in St. Louis, Missouri, and now he's a motivational speaker and an author, which we'll get to. And really looking forward to this interview, Terrell. Thanks for joining the show. And first of all, how are you and your family doing today?
And we're great. Nathan, thank you for having me, man. I'm really excited about being able to get on the line and hang out with you for a bit. We are doing good. We're out here in Southern California. Believe it or not, it looks like it's going to rain today. Yeah. So we'll see how that works out.
Yeah, same here. I'm in Jersey right now, and we have dark clouds, right? I mean, it's a cloudy day here today, too. So hopefully it's been weird weather so far. So
yeah, that's the truth. It has been.
Yeah, so I want to start off with your career and childhood. Obviously, you grew up in St. Louis, Missouri, and what was it like growing up as a kid there? And what a nice city to grow up in. And when did you start realizing that you wanted to get into the game of football? And who was your role model too in there?
Yeah, the funny thing about football and me is I honestly cannot remember a time I didn't want to be a professional football player. I mean, from the time I was, really very young, they said that I bought into football. I wanted to play football. I enjoyed watching it, playing it, the whole thing. So that honestly, that for a very long time, and I imagine I'm just like any other kid out there, I wanted to be a pro football player. And it was amazing that I got to live my dream. But, just as a, 3, 4, 5 years old, I was idolizing guys like Tony Dorsett and Earl Campbell and some of those guys. I was a big Cowboy fan and Oklahoma Sooners fan at the time.
I'm a big Cowboy fan right now.
and at the time, the Oklahoma Sooners, with Jamel Holloway, and they were just a fantastic team back in that time frame. So I just really gravitated toward the sport of football. And growing up in Missouri, I don't think my journey was much different than most of the kids. Missouri is not a very wealthy town. So most of us were middle class, lower middle class kids. And I grew up, lower middle class, and second of 5 children. Both my parents were, my heroes growing up, to be quite honest with you. I idolized some football players, but my dad and my mom were always, and to this day, are my heroes. And we were, the community I grew up in was big on football, wrestling, and soccer. That's Missouri for you. And I was very fortunate to play for a great high school with a lot of great players, and, it just emerged as that guy. And that was it, man.
Wow. Yeah. So for you, playing while growing up in football and playing in high school, obviously, it's really important for players to learn multiple positions. For you, before choosing running back, did you get to play any other positions in football, like on the offensive side and defensive side also?
Yeah. The funny thing, Nathan, our high school was like a really good high school. So a lot of guys went to college from Hazelwood East, and because of that, we were a school a lot of guys wanted to try to get into the district to go to. Mm-hmm. And it was like unheard of for underclassmen to play on varsity football. In my sophomore year, I got invited to play on the varsity football team as a defensive back.
Wow.
So that was my other position. Now, I always grew up being taught to play 2 positions, at least 2 positions. And my father was a good football player in his day. And it was important to him that all of us that wanted to play football played a defensive position. And here was his reasoning. Because on offense, football is such a physical game. And offense is more natural to a person. It is natural to get out the way. If I, threw something at you, you get out the way. You wouldn't even have to think about it. It's your second reaction. What's not natural is to want to hit something, right, and to want to be hit by something. So defense allows you to develop that mentality, that physical mentality that ultimately helped me be a good running back on offense. I didn't start at running back on offense until I was a junior in high school. And but I emerged as a defensive back, and I thought because of my size that I probably would go to college as a defensive back. That's why I played both ways. That's why I never picked one over the other. I played both ways, and as time went on, it emerged that that running back was going to be my spot. But yeah, that was my other position.
Did you ever? I'm just curious. Did you ever think to yourself, maybe you can play both positions at the same time while you're in your career?
In college and in high school, when I got to college and I started seeing, the skill level of all those wide receivers, I quickly knew I'm going to stay at running back. I don't want to try to play defense, especially since some of those guys were big as linebackers on offense. I was like, I don't want to hit those guys every day. So I'm gonna stay on the offensive side.
Yeah. So what was the transition like for you going from defensive back to running back, and what was the training process for you when you became that running back, and what did you learn as a running back in high school to become where you're at right now?
Yeah, you know what I did? The cool thing about where I grew up is when you're playing in the streets and stuff like that, you're pretty much you're playing offense and defense. When you guys have the ball, you got to be the offensive player. When the other team has it, you got to play defense. So it was really natural for me to be a running back. That's what I always dreamt and wanted to be anyway. I over wide receiver, over anything. And going into high school was very fortunate because I didn't play Little League football like a lot of the kids in my neighborhood did. I didn't play Little League. I didn't put on my first set of pads until I was a freshman in high school. And I think it didn't take everybody long to know that I was going to be a good running back. So I became the starter, I think, within about the first week and a half of camp, as a freshman. So that was my first and my most natural position. But because of the way high school went and the way that our coaches trained us, it was important for us to play a second position as well. So most of the time in high school, especially freshman, sophomore football, the best athlete is going to play a few different positions. Wherever you need, you're going to put the best athlete. And I was one of at least the top 3 athletes on my high school team. So it wasn't a hard transition because I was doing them both. My introduction into organized football had me at defensive back and at running back. So it wasn't like I only played DB and then transitioned into running back. I was doing them both. It just so happened that the varsity football team was undergoing some transition in the defensive backfield, and I was a better option than some of the other people. And when they gave me a tryout, it just worked out for me, man. And it wasn't long. It was toward the end of the year where they wanted to also see me as a running back. Mm-hmm. So maybe game 8 or 9 or 10, I started playing running back. And I knew that I could compete at running back at that level too. So the transition, in many regards, the greatest transition in the game of football is related to speed. So the game just gets faster the higher the level goes. And as I started to adjust to the speed and physicality of varsity football, I mean, it was just, Lord, just don't let me get hurt. And I should be able to find a nice opportunity for myself.
Yeah, so speaking of the running back position real quick, and obviously you said you looked up to Tony Dorsett and Earl Campbell. Obviously, Tony Dorsett played for the Cowboys. Earl Campbell played for Texas University. So what stood out for you when you looked up to them, and obviously 2 of the best running backs, in my opinion, to play the game? And what stood out to you when you looked at their stuff?
Well, the ironic thing is that they were both relatively small running backs. Now, Earl Campbell had huge hips and thighs that made him look bigger. It made him look like a fullback, to be quite honest with you. But he really wasn't a big guy. And of course, Tony Dorsett, I don't think he ever played a down over 190 pounds. So their games were something that I could see myself doing. Dorsett with the speed and the vision. And of course, Earl Campbell had great vision. He was known for his power, but if you just watch him play, his vision was unbelievable. And during the time I grew up, they were some of the guys that was easier for me to gravitate to. Guys like Eric Dickerson, and they were later in the game. Walter Payton was obviously another one that I enjoyed watching, but he played for the Bears. He didn't play for the Cowboys. So, but he obviously, as a football fan, I really bought into guys like that. So for me, watching how those smaller guys navigated a game where a big boy game was important for me. And I realized that it wasn't just about having speed and being faster, because some of those guys are just as fast as you, and you're only talking about tenths of a second. Right. The difference between a 4.4 and a 4.6 is 2/10 of a second. Yeah. Right. So, and that's not as drastic once you put it out on a football field as it can seem when we're all talking about who's got a fast 40-yard dash. So it wasn't just about the speed, but how did these guys play the game? What was their blocking schemes going to be like? How did they pass protect as a little guy going up against a linebacker that may outweigh them by 80 pounds, 60 pounds, 70 pounds? What was that going to be like? That's what I started studying early. And my high school coaches were really good coaches, and they made sure that I studied some of the grades who were most like my running style.
Yeah, so tell our fans about your college recruitment process. Obviously, you chose Wisconsin. And how many offers did you get before Wisconsin? And what made you choose Wisconsin, a great football program and a great basketball program too? And what was the main factors when you chose Wisconsin University?
Well, look, it wasn't because they were good. Let's start there. They had consecutive 1-11 seasons when I went to Wisconsin. Right. And the Wisconsin was one of those things that I just like to kind of add to the idea of divine intervention. I believe that the good Lord has always kind of guided my life and had his hand on my life. And even when I was not the smartest person, there was always something that just guided me in the right space. And Wisconsin was one of those things, man. Let me tell you what, the schools I got recruited pretty much by everybody in the nation. And the schools that I took my trips to were Iowa, who were co-Big Ten champs with Ohio State. And I took a trip to Ohio State, and the national champions that year was Colorado, which I took a trip to Colorado. Because I was a big Tony Dorsett fan, I took a trip to Pitt, University of Pittsburgh. I wasn't ever planning on going. They just have this locker enshrinement that is really cool to see. And I figured since they were going to pay for the trip, I was going to go and check out my favorite running backs college. But those were and then Wisconsin. Those were the 5 trips that I took. National champions, Big Ten champions, excuse me, and then the lowly Wisconsin Badgers. Wow. The guy called me from Wisconsin, and I was taught to respect everybody. And I took the phone call, and in my head, I'm thinking, I'm not going to Wisconsin. One, it's, way up north. It gets cold up there, and they don't win. And I fell in love with the recruiter. He was an amazing guy, really piqued my interest. And they prioritized me, set them down. Eventually, I said, hey, I'll at least come and take a look. And I'll tell you, even of the 5 schools, I went to Wisconsin absolutely first to get it out of the way. Said, I want to make this guy, he was a nice guy. I want to give him his trip, and I'm going to get this out the way so I can go start looking at the schools I'm really thinking about going to, which at the time was Colorado. And it was just amazing. I got to campus, and the guy that showed me around was Mel Tucker, who is the head coach now of Michigan State. Oh yeah. And Mel Tucker he showed me around, eventually became my roommate in my junior, senior year. And he showed me around, just an amazing, amazing, beautiful campus, amazing people. The players were like me, they come from environments like mine. So I understood guys like Troy Vincent and Brent Moss and, Mel Tucker. I understood those guys. And I thought to myself, well, it's great meeting you guys because I'm not coming here, but I'll see you guys when we play. And after the trip was done, I just couldn't get Wisconsin out of my heart and out of my head. When I finished my trips, I thought to myself, all right, maybe I can go to, maybe I'll go to Ohio State. They were co-Big Ten champs. And the night leading up to choosing day, I was pretty much sitting on the bed with my parents, talking to them about why I should choose Ohio State over Wisconsin. And Wisconsin just would not, in my heart and in my mind. And as we stacked the pros and cons, it was right in the lump. And it really came down to the fact that I was going to get a chance to play right away at Wisconsin. And I believed in Barry Alvarez. So Barry Alvarez, I was his second recruiting class, and he convinced me, as well as a host of other young men, that he was going to help turn around the Wisconsin program. And who would have known? Rose Bowl later, Hall of Fame Bowl championship later. Everything he promised us came to pass. Degrees, the whole shebang. I went to college and got everything that college could offer me, and even had an opportunity to play in the NFL. So it worked out.
Wow, what a tough situation to be in, to choose between Ohio State and Wisconsin. Well, luckily it worked out for you. And speaking of Wisconsin, what was the atmosphere like playing in front of those fans? And
oh my gosh, it's the best atmosphere in America. I'm telling you, you will not go to another stadium, and I've been to a lot of stadiums in my day. You will not go to a stadium that will have more energy than Wisconsin. That will have more fun than Wisconsin, that has traditions, the way UW has traditions. And listen, everybody talks about how cold it is and stuff like that. And in January and February, it can get cold, but it's such a great atmosphere that's the least of your concern. And it's not just a great football atmosphere, it's a great college atmosphere. And that's what I needed. I needed the space to not have to grow up too fast. Right. I needed that space to be able to develop. I walked into school, I was 17 years old, young man, and I walked out as a mature man. I just came in, and I needed a space that didn't move me too fast, but also wasn't an impediment to my growth. And the journey at UW as a student, with my peers, meeting people from all over the world. St. Louis is pretty much black and white. At least when I grew up there, it was just pretty much black and white. And it gave me the opportunity to have my first international experiences, opportunity to meet men and women from all over the world because of the diversity at the university, as well as just see life differently. Right. To see life differently, to be around major construction efforts and to see them spend millions of dollars on things. And you just start to see that, man, I could be a part of something huge. I could be a part of something huge, not just building a program, but being a part of a university family that allows me to be a part of something bigger than myself. That's what UW was about.
And also, I want to ask you about what was it like playing with Mel Tucker? Obviously, a great head coach now at Michigan State, and he knows his stuff. And so but what was it like playing with him and as a teammate too?
Oh, well, Tucker was the hardest hitter. He's probably one of the hardest hitting guys I've ever played against. And he plays strong safety. And I'm telling you, you just got out of his way because it was going to be some serious contact. That's why all of his teams are so physical. Even when he was defensive coordinator in the NFL, his teams were physical, swarm to the ball, because that's his mentality. But it was as a roommate when I learned that his mental approach to the game was like another coach. We come home from practice, and he could almost tell us everything we were doing on the offensive side of the ball. And he was a defensive player. I just realized that his IQ when it came to X's and O's was at a whole nother level. So it didn't surprise me one bit when he called us one day and said, "Guess where I'm going to be coaching?" I'm like, "Well, where? With who?" He's like, "With Nick Saban at Michigan State." And we're like, "You traitor! Go back to Wisconsin." So he did. That's where he did his graduate work, and also as a grad student coach assistant with Nick Saban there, and then of course the rest has been history for him. But it was great. And he's still a friend to this day.
Wow. Yeah. So tell our fans now, after college, obviously the draft experience. What was it like for you, the NFL draft experience, and waiting for your name to be called? You got drafted in 1995, round 2, pick 51 by the San Diego Chargers, now the Los Angeles Chargers. But what was the draft experience for you like, for you and your family?
Well, I mean, you have to remember, like I said earlier, it was the only dream that I really had for myself at the time. And my biggest goal in life was to somehow make it to the National Football League. And while I did take school seriously and finished with a degree and all those things, in my head, that was my goal. That's what I wanted to do. So as you start to get to certain levels and you start to see that it's a realization that you're going to reach a goal, a lifelong goal, a goal that was 15 years in the making, I was ecstatic. And I made up my mind that I was going to enjoy the moment, whether I got drafted in the first round or in the last round, that I was going to enjoy the moment. I wasn't going to be overly stressed. And I was just going to, let the chips fall where they may, get to the NFL and do my best. So for me and my family, we enjoyed the journey. We knew after a while, you kind of knew that I would be a first or second round pick. Enough teams were calling that needed me. And I was really hoping to make it into the first round, because I knew if I wasn't in that top 15 or so, then I would probably fall into the second round, because the bottom 15 at that time didn't necessarily need a draft pick. I didn't need a running back. So, after the initial drama around the 15th, 16th, and 17th pick, then I was able to kind of settle in and say, all right, I'll wait until the second round. But the NFL draft doesn't work like that. People just keep calling you. The teams just keep calling you. Even teams that don't need a running back will call. So I got calls that morning from so many people that after the Chicago Bears made their pick with Rashaan Salaam, which kind of was the place where it was my last opportunity to go in the first round. And they called and said, hey, if the teams before us take Rashaan, we're going to take you in the first round. If they don't, if this team doesn't take him, then we're going to take him. And we'll, and good luck. That was kind of, after that initial space, I felt pretty like I need to get away from the TV, right, because I wanted to not stress. And now I was starting to stress. And so I went out in the backyard, and my dad had put up a little hoop for us when we were kids. And I went out in the backyard to start shooting around when the second round came around. And shortly after the second round, 50th pick or something like that. There was 30 something odd picks in the first round. And I was like the 50th pick. My mom calls and says, hey, the phone is ringing. I think you should come pick this up. And I'm like, answer it, Mom. I'm working on my jump shot. And she's like, no, I think you should take this call. And it was Bobby Beathard with the San Diego Chargers. And he was saying, hey, man, we're gonna pick you next. This team is going to do this team is going to do that, and then we're going to get you with the first pick. We just traded away our first round draft choice to Detroit to get you. So, I was like, I just heard another guy tell me an hour ago that they were going to pick you. He's like, no. We just traded away a first round draft choice to get you. So we're going to get you. That was my story, man. And literally about 3 minutes later, you see it coming across the ESPN ticker.
Wow. Yeah. This is what I love to see. It's always amazing to see family get involved in this draft story somehow in some kind of fashion. Like the family members picking up the phone, not the players. It's funny how it's amazing when that happens.
Yeah, it was hilarious. My mom comes and she says, hey, you should come get the phone. And I'm like, okay, eventually I come in, I grab the phone, and congratulations, you are our second pick, and we're really excited about you. And we're gonna be making this pick here pretty soon. I'm gonna have Coach call you, give us a few seconds. I'm gonna put him on the phone. All right, bye. And my family was like, I'm like, yes, I got drafted. I'm getting drafted. And my family was like, well, to who? And I said, I don't know. I don't know. I just hung up the phone and I'm not sure who I'm getting drafted by. Wow. And she, so the next call, what happens is like the owner calls you, and then the general manager, the coach, and they all call you like back to back to back. And because they're all in different locations, it's a different phone call. You know what I mean? So they're generally not necessarily all in the same room. The owner is at home somewhere, and the general manager is like in the war room, and you got guys down on the floor. So when they called me, when the second call came, it was Coach. And Coach was just sharing with me that, hey, this is what's going on. And I said, guys, Chicago just called me saying this. And he's like, no, we just traded away a pick. And this is the call. This is the call you're waiting for. And I'm like, wow, we're going to California. So it was good.
Yeah. So now, what was it like for you playing for the Chargers throughout your whole career? And obviously, Chargers have a lot of history. Obviously, LaDainian Tomlinson, Lawrence O'Neal. You can go down the list. The late Junior Seau, which you got to play with. So, what was it like playing for the Chargers and playing in Jack Murphy Stadium and playing for Bobby Ross?
It was amazing. It was a dream come true. When they drafted me, Ronnie Harmon was kind of the receiving third down back. And I was obviously drafted to replace him. He was amazing, but he was aging and, contracts and stuff like that. So there was a space for me when I got drafted. I didn't get drafted and there was no room for me. I got drafted and they wanted to put me to work. So that was really exciting for me. And I was really really amazed by the teammates that I had. Our running back room was Natron Means, who was a phenom at the time. Ronnie Harmon, who was a phenom at the time as well. And we had two guys that had been to the Pro Bowl in the running back room. Our football team had just come from the Super Bowl that previous year. So San Diego was on fire, right? It was on, the city was just hype, Charger fever all day long. And those first 3 years, the first 3.5 years of my NFL career, we were a really good football team. We were a team that vied for the playoffs or was in the playoffs every year. So it was, when you say like it was like everything I dreamt it could be. It's getting an opportunity to playing alongside some guys that would eventually be Stan Humphries, Junior Seau, Rodney Harrison, guys that would be Hall of Famers. I got a chance to play alongside. And honestly, when you talk about linebackers, I can make the case that Junior might be one of the top two ever in the history of the game. So to say that I played with a Hall of Famer, I could also say I played with a great. And there is an argument that could be made that Rodney Harrison was one of the top 3 or 4 strong safeties ever to play the game. So I got to see some guys that I idolized growing up, play with them and build personal relationships with a handful of them. And some of those guys I still stay in contact with today, Fred McQuarrie, Rodney Harrison, those guys. And we see each other around and still connect and communicate on a regular basis. So it was a great ride. 8 years was an amazing time for me.
Yeah, so this is a 2-part question. Obviously, Fred McQuarrie, another great player you play with, and obviously the late Junior Seau, unfortunate what happened. A great linebacker, you said, and obviously you play Rodney Harrison. So what was it like just being surrounded with great players in that locker room every day, every week? And then also the next part to this question, what was it like just spending your career with only one team?
Well, it was amazing being around those guys because everybody got pushed all the time, whether it was, one-on-ones in practice or team practice or whatever it was, the competition was high. So it made everybody play better because when you're as good as Junior Seau, you're not just good on game day, you're good in practice too. And those guys made everybody elevate their game. And that was the fun part because in college, we were a team that had to learn how to compete. And the competition in practice made us great competitors out on the football field. And that kind of competition raises the level of whatever's in you. Whatever you have, you're going to be that much better because the competition that you practice with every day is going to demand it from you. So that was fantastic, particularly the first part of my career. The second part of my career, as I was getting older, and we drafted LaDainian Tomlinson was another Hall of Famer, great running back, great football player. Then I was able to kind of shift into a different mode. Right. So now I became the guy that was the trendsetter for work ethic and the trendsetter for working out and studying film, because guys were watching how we would approach the game and how I approach the game. So I learned from guys like that. And then I felt it was also my responsibility to pass that down as some of the younger guys came into the room. And I knew that eventually I would be passing the baton over to those guys. So doing that, it was amazing. And fortunately for me, the only reason I got to do that was because I spent 8 years with one team. Mm-hmm. And that was unheard of. It's unheard of today, unless you're a quarterback. It is unheard of to spend your entire career with one football team. And it just worked out that way. It just, we looked up and we were transitioning at the third down back position, receiving position. And I was able to do that. And then as the game transitioned a little bit more out of big backs into smaller, more flexible backs that could do multi things, I was the bridge until a guy like LaDainian Tomlinson came in that pretty much would be the next generation of backs. And they needed me then to be more mentor and friend and help them around the NFL and just navigating what it means to be at this stage. And so it just worked out. The circumstances worked out. And I'm fortunate because I've made San Diego my home, and, my wife and children are here. And I met my wife in San Diego. Obviously, my babies are San Diegans. And this ends up being the place where I've chosen to, branch out the tree of my next journey.
Yeah. So speaking of LaDainian Tomlinson, what was it like helping him out when he came in, but giving him the throne after you finish your career? And then when he comes in, you help him out. And what was it like just seeing him grow as a player? And when was the first time you thought thought to yourself that he can be a Hall of Famer and a great player like this?
Yeah. Well, let me say this. Let me correct something. In professional sports, you don't give your throne away to anybody. They take it from you, right? So LT, I didn't give it to LT. LT came in and he was LT.
That's what I meant
and before you realize it, it's like you better either acknowledge this or you're just going to be mad all the time. And but I remember telling LT this about fifth game of his rookie year. Because I'm on the team, I'm drafted because I'm a tweener. I'm a guy that has vision as a running back, but can run routes like a wide receiver. And I was used to create mismatches with linebackers and with safeties. So that was the way that I was used most of the time. And we also had a big back, what we call a bigger back, that would just pound it. So whenever there was a mismatch, if you had linebackers on there, we'd pass the ball when I was in. If you had a lot of DBs trying to stop me from running routes, we'd run the football. I could do both of those things. And the league was turning in a direction where they were asking their running backs to do more of that. Marshall Faulk, Priest Holmes in Kansas City, eventually guys, they were the prototype before LT. And when LT came, we were about game 5, and I remember telling him in a moment of a private conversation that he's the best running back I've seen in person. I said, "You're the best back I've seen in person." And I've watched them all. I mean, I've lived in a lifetime to see Emmitt Smith, Natron Means. I said, "You're the best running back I've seen in person. And if you just progress the way you're supposed to progress, this time next year, they won't have need for any of us running backs in this room. Like, all of us should be sent to another team next year, except for a fullback, somebody to block for you. But anybody that plays running back like you, because you run like one of the greats, you also can run routes as good as I can run routes. You catch as good as me. And I'm getting long in the tooth in the game, and it's like no reason. Like, you are that good." And it was probably around the middle of the season, turning into the back end of the season, where it started to click to him that, hey, I'm better than everybody else. Not just on this team, I'm better than whoever they're going to line up next to me, outside of me. And he started to get it. And by the time, now we ended up spending 2 years together. So moving into his second year, and my final years, my 8th year or so, moving into that, he really grabbed the reins and said, I got it from here. And it was just a joy to watch him play. And, you know, I got my playing time doing what I did. It wasn't a big deal, but it was just fun watching him because he did it right. Humble kid, guy came in to learn, natural transition, and he respected people and respected the game. And it's been fun, you know, to be honest with you, to watch him even now with his new career with the NFL Network. It's just been fun to watch him.
Yeah, so speaking of your career, not only you rushed the ball, you got to catch the ball too. And what was that like, being a receiver / running back at the same time in your career?
Well, catching the ball was, you know, I realized early that catching the ball was why I was there. You know, it was at the time I got drafted. There was the linebackers were bigger, stronger, bulkier, not slimmer, faster like they are today. They were bigger, bulkier. And so was your running backs. You always had a big guy that could combat those linebackers. And the way that the league evolves, the league shifts and evolves every so often. Back then you had short, really fast receivers. Now you have big, tall kind of, and that just forces the defensive backs to change. And when the running backs started to change, then the linebackers changed. But so at the time I got drafted, I was drafted to exploit that crease in the defense. Right. I was to exploit the heavier back, the slower, strong safety. I was brought in to exploit that. And it was perfect because honestly, at my size, I probably couldn't have played in a different era where they would have required me to just pound the ball all the time. But it was fun. It was great. You know, you look up, you have 50, 60, 40 catches a year, and you get to touch the ball in different ways. Defenses have to prepare for you because they don't know what you're going to do when you step out. I may start in the backfield and run, or start in the backfield and run a route. I may start in the backfield and move to the slot, you know, and it's like you could just tell that when you talk to guys afterwards, they just be like, man, your position is the hardest position to prepare for. And I was good at it. You know, my job got measured by how many third down conversions I could turn into first downs. And I was good at what I did. So that's one reason why, you know, I stuck around. And if anything happened to the main guy, I could be a good bridge until that main guy got back or whatever. So because I also was able to do that. And I had a high football IQ. I loved the game. I was able to see the game like a coach would see the game. And that kept the guy who was, you know, 192, 93 pounds alive and in the NFL for 8 years.
So now looking back at your career, and obviously your NFL career had over 1,000 rushing yards, over 10 rushing touchdowns, over 1,000 receiving yards, over three receiving touchdowns. And so looking back at your career, how grateful are you to be in this position and playing for Wisconsin, working hard every day, getting to your goal? So what would you say your best moment was in college in Wisconsin and in the NFL throughout your career?
Well, I would, you know, if we're talking about on the football field, I would measure our greatest moment was probably, to me, my senior year when we won the Outback Bowl. And even though the previous year we had won the Rose Bowl, but our team had went through so much adversity that year. It was just a tumultuous year, and the guys galvanized themselves together, got ourselves back on track, and had a great season. Finished 9-3, and ultimately won the bowl game and broke some records. So I was most proud of that team, even though our Rose Bowl team was amazing to be on that as well. But that team, we had to find a different grit in order to get our season back the way we wanted it to go. And so that was a very proud moment, proud for myself, proud for the squad. And it was the culminating, you know, it was the end of the journey that all of us young freshmen came in, and we were able to look Coach Alvarez in the face and say, hey, man, you kept your promise to us and we kept our promise to you. And so that was probably the best part. My NFL career, boy, it's hard to say what the best moment was in my NFL career. I had some really good moments. I think probably one of the best moments would have been around my 4th year. Natron broke his leg, and I had to be the starting running back for like the last 6 games of the year. And I enjoyed my position as the tweener, as a third down back, for a lot of reasons. But there is always something on the inside of you that says, hey, man, I could be a full-time running back as well. I could be a full-time running back as well. And at that time, it was hard to give a guy my size a chance to be a full-time running back because of the way the league was. And there just simply, quite honestly, weren't many guys my size that played full-time running back at that time. And when I say full-time, I mean a guy that's going to get 25, 35 carries a game and live to tell about it the next week without being broken up. And when Nate broke his leg, you know, coach said, no, we're not bringing in another guy. You're our guy. And that was a great 6-week runs. You know, that was when I showed the squad and I showed the team that, hey, man, I could be a feature guy as well, even at my size. I was durable. I had like 300 or 400-yard games. It's one of those things where I remember Joe Bugle grabbing me by the neck after the last game of the year. We missed the playoffs that year, but he grabbed me by the neck. He says, hey, man, you're a 1,000-yard running back. He said, do you realize that? You're a 1,000-yard back. If you would have the entire season to do what you did, you're a 1,000-yard back. We could win with you. And that was a proud moment because the running back in me, the professional in me realized that I needed to do a couple of things to help my team win, and I needed to settle into a space. But the running back in me was like, yeah, I want that validation of being able to know that I could have carried the load for our squad if we needed to. And we had a great team, a great offensive line, good coaching staff. And yeah, that probably one of the I had so many proud moments, you know, but that's probably one of them. Even my first preseason game, I think the first time I touched the ball in the NFL preseason game, I took it like 94 yards for a touchdown. So it was the opening kickoff and 94 yards touchdown. So I just, you know, that was great. That was like, what a way to open up my career. So yeah, it was some good stuff.
I want to give a shout out real quick to one of our fans. She's tuning in. She always tunes in. Miss Mocha Bella. She said good afternoon and listening to the show.
Good afternoon, Miss Mocha.
Yeah, so thank you for tuning in as always. So, but I want to ask you now, transitioning from your career, now being an author and motivational speaker, and you have a book out there called The Book of You. What's that been like for you so far after your NFL career and having a book and helping out other people now?
It's the only other thing I've been called to do. You know, I think that football was something that I really felt like I had a natural knack and a calling into. And now inspiring and motivating people from a natural perspective and a faith perspective is the other thing that I feel very called to do. So I'm not saying I'm good at it, even though I do feel like I'm pretty good at it. I feel like it's my lane. It's where I'm supposed to be. And the inspiration that I'm able to provide has been helpful to a lot of people. So it's been equally as exciting. It's like my next chapter. It was like the second chapter after that first chapter of football. Guys are always asking themselves, well, what next? Or what are you going to do? Or who are you going to be next? Or, you know, what do you do with your life? Because you retire at 29, 30, 31, and you hope to live till you're 80. So you've got 50 years to figure something out with your life. And I was very fortunate. I was drawn into the space of helping people process life. And helping them realize that the innate potential within them has given them an opportunity to make the life for themselves that they want. And with faith and with hard work and with a vision of your journey, you can start to chart a pathway that is that you will find very meaningful. So that's been my journey. And when I wrote the Book of You, it was really about helping people find significance. We had started to bloom into a world where there was so much fluff, and we lived in this Instagram, Twitter world where everything is based off of a moment in time, a photo that's simply a moment in time. And and people were trying to find their value in somebody else's moment in time. And when I wrote the book of you, that's, life is not about that. Life is not about just being successful. It's about having significance and being significant. And the book of you is about you, and it's about your significance and about your meaning to this world and your meaning to your family and to all the things that matter. And that's what makes you a real success. You've got to do the practical things. You got to make your money. You got to do all that stuff. I'm not taking that away from people, but I know wealthy people that do not feel significant. And the book of you is there to challenge you and to remind you that you are a significant person. You're called not to just be successful, but to be significant. And your voice, your meaning, your purpose, your essence matters. So that's part of the message that I've been getting out there. And I'm working on my second book right now called Execute. And that's just getting it out of your head into the real world. And it's all about those guys and gals that have great dreams and visions, and that swirl around up here and just stay in ideation and never get into realization. I want to push on you and challenge you to get it out of your head into the real world. I want you to execute on your vision and your dream and your heart. So that's the next one that's coming out. So you guys look for that early spring next year, 2022. We're shopping it around right now. So if you got any major book editors that are watching that want that book, you call me.
All right. Yeah, we'll keep an eye. We'll keep a look on that one. And where can people find the book of you?
You can find the book of you anywhere books are sold. And this is a great time because we're in a down spin. It's kind of the way the life cycle of a book works. We're in the down cycle, so you should be able to get a great price. Amazon, any place. Around Christmas time, they creep the prices back up on you. So get it now. Or you can reach out to my office, and we sell it at a higher price point, but you can reach out to my office and we'll get it to you as well. And you can find me on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, all Terrell Fletcher, one word, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. Or you can go to terrellfletcher.com and you can catch up. MeetTerrell.com and terrellfletcher.com are the exact same website. So I'd love for you guys to check out some of the stuff I'm about and connect with us, and let's build life together.
Yeah, that'd be awesome, man. Before we get to the last few things, I want to ask you, what do you like about today's running backs in the NFL? For example, if you want to go with the Chargers, Austin Eckler, great one. I had him on the show last year, and it was an honor talking to him, and he's a great running back now. So what do you like about him? Ezekiel Elliott from Dallas, Aaron Jones from Green Bay. I can go down the list. But in general, what do you like about today's running backs?
I like the versatility. I like that they pulled the running back out of just having the ball handed to them, and they found ways to make them a bigger part of the offense, especially since, there's so many throwing, plays that are centered around throwing. They've allowed the running backs to be receivers, allowed them to be decoys, allowed them to catch screens, run routes. And that's kind of fun because no other position gets to go line up 7 yards deep. Everybody, the running back is 7 yards deep, and he also gets to line up as a receiver. And sometimes they squeeze him in as a tight end. And other times, he gets to run everybody's route tree, but nobody gets to take the running back's job. So I like the versatility, and and I like the fact that because of that versatility, it makes it necessary to have two guys that can ball out. So it's more space to running backs and get more running back type of skill sets out on the football field.
Yeah, so I'm sure you've been watching the season. What are your thoughts so far on the season? We're already in week 5, which is crazy. So what are your thoughts on the season so far?
Well, I tell you what, I think you've got to acknowledge that the Cowboys have probably surprised people, and Dak is playing very confident, and he looks amazing to me. With a little bit of more improvement on their defense this year, they look like they can mature into a team to be reckoned with toward the back end of the year. You can't sleep on Buffalo. In fact, they look absolutely dominant to me. I would put them right up there as probably one of my top 2 teams in the league right now. They are absolutely dominant. They show up each week, and because they're up in upper New York and they're not a sexy team, we don't talk about them nearly as much. We talk about the Rams and we talk about the 49ers. We don't talk about Buffalo.
Yeah.
They are, in my opinion, one of the top two teams out there right now. And I like what's happening in that space. I'm not yet a believer in Arizona, even though they're undefeated. I'm not a believer that they will be able to play playoff football when it matters. And I am a believer. I'm tweening on the Rams. Like, I love the Rams. I love how they're made up. They really can be good. I'm interested to see how things pan out. I think they outlast the rest of the field in their division, the 49ers and the Arizona Cardinals. So, my earliest impression is this has been more exciting than I anticipated. The games have been competitive. Watching these new young quarterbacks has been fun to watch. I need them to start winning some games, but but it's been fun to watch. But the NFL is the NFL. It's built for parity, and we're getting it this year.
Yeah. So the last two things here, our team is part of this foundation. It's called the Hugh Jackson Foundation. He's a former NFL coach. He's now the offensive coordinator at Tennessee State with Eddie George. And we're trying to help him prevent human trafficking, making sure the community stays safe and the kids stay safe. So we'll send you the foundation so you guys can check it out.
That'd be amazing. I live in San Diego. We're right here on the border. Human trafficking is a big issue in our communities. So our antennas are on high alert for. Big kudos to Hugh and to the organizers of the foundation. This is necessary, and it's quality for them to take on this idea.
Yeah, and the last thing here, would you like to say anything to all the nurses, doctors, and all the essential workers right now?
Absolutely. You're the essential workers. You're our modern day heroes. You are our modern day superheroes, and we appreciate you. Sometimes it has to take calamity and tragedy in order for heroes to emerge. And life brought us this COVID-19 situation, and it did not ease off on the other things that are happening. So cancer is still here, and diabetes is still here. So you guys have not just the load that you once carried, you have the new load, the major load of COVID-19, and you have stepped up admirably. We appreciate you all. We are thankful for you, and more importantly, we see you. We see you. You guys are not invisible. So thank you. We honor you, and we appreciate you.
Yeah, well said. And there it is. That wraps up episode 916 with former NFL Wisconsin running back Terrell Fletcher, who played for the San Diego Chargers. Now he's a motivational speaker and he's an author. He has a book out there called The Book of You, and he's working on a new book. So go check that out. And thank you again, Terrell, for coming on the show. It's truly an honor. And we would like to have you back on the show at some point so you can meet the full team.
Come on, man. Anytime. Nathan, this was fantastic. Thank you, man.
Hey, no problem. Thank you.